The ground still smelled like smoke, and she wouldn't stop digging. Her paws were covered in ash, her ribs visible beneath that dirty soot-gray coat. A pale streak ran from her snout down her back like she'd been painted by fire itself. She was a German Shepherd puppy, no more than 5 months old, standing alone beneath the burned remains of a wooden cross in Paradise, California. I thought she was just another stray at first. This town hadn't known peace since the campfire took it. Most dogs that showed up here were ghosts. Scared, skinny, looking for scraps. But this one was different. She wasn't scavenging. She was digging. Frantic, rhythmic, like something buried deep down needed out. Her back legs shook and her left front paw kept slipping in the dust like it hurt to use it. But she never stopped. I'd come to the memorial alone like I did most Thursdays. Just me in the silence like some sad ritual. I didn't even notice her at first. The sun was hot that day, baking the blackened soil. Then I heard her, the soft scraping. And when I turned, she was there. Head low, eyes focused, ash kicking up behind her with each scoop. "Hey," I called out. She didn't look at me. She kept digging. Her collar was half burned, the kind made of nylon, melted stiff in one spot. I stepped closer and crouched down, the dust biting my knees. "What are you looking for, girl?" She paused, lifted her head, looked me dead in the eyes, and then she went right back to it. I should have walked away, told myself I had no business getting involved. But something about her, maybe the way she ignored me, like I didn't matter next to whatever secret that soil held, it pulled me in. My name is David, by the way. I was a firefighter for 21 years, retired too early, too broken. My partner, Tyler, didn't make it out that night. The campfire took a lot, but that was the one I never got back. I found myself kneeling beside her. She stopped digging for a second when I touched the edge of the dirt she'd scattered. Her body leaned into mine, just barely, like she was checking if I was real. Then she nudged her snout into the hole again. She had no tag, just that burned collar with half a letter melted into the nylon. Maybe an E, or maybe just wishful thinking. Her ears were torn at the tips. Her tail twitched with every movement, not in fear, in frustration, like she needed to finish. I sat down right there in the ash and watched her work. People think dogs don't remember things. They're wrong. This German Shepherd puppy wasn't just digging. She was searching for what I didn't know. But I felt it in my chest like a weight I hadn't carried since that night we lost everything. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The second time I saw her, she was back in the exact same spot. Same burnt cross, same shallow hole. Only this time there was blood on her paw. It had rained the night before. Not hard, just enough to turn the ash into something like paste. I pulled up in my truck around noon, not planning to stay long. But there she was again, her muddy gray coat pressed low to the ground, ears twitching, pawing the same place like the storm hadn't stopped her for a second. I jumped out and jogged over. Hey, girl, stop. You're hurt." She didn't flinch, didn't growl. She just looked up at me like I was in the way, then kept scraping, her front paw leaving smears of pink in the pale ash. I knelt and gently caught her leg mid-motion. Her body stiffened, but she didn't try to run. The pad was cracked and raw, probably torn open from all the digging. "You're going to ruin yourself, girl." There was something in her eyes. This burning need to finish, like the world had gone quiet around her, and only that dirt could speak. I wrapped her paw in a clean rag from my back seat, tied it loose, and sat beside her. She didn't move, just stared at the ground she'd broken. I hadn't planned on staying, not after last week, but something about her, this small, broken German Shepherd puppy, refusing to quit, got under my skin, the kind of stubborn I knew well. The kind you only earn through pain. I opened the back of the truck and patted the seat. "Come on, you need help. A vet, some food. You keep tearing that up and you won't be walking much longer." She looked at the open door, then back at the hole. I waited. Then she did something I didn't expect. She limped over and jumped in. Just like that. The ride back into town was quiet. She curled up tight in the back, shivering. I turned the heat up and tossed my jacket over her. Her body was so small, barely filling the bench seat, but there was a heaviness to her, like she carried more than a puppy ever should. I stopped at the local clinic. Small, 2 rooms, half-shuttered windows. The vet, Sarah, took one look and gasped, "Where'd you find her?" "Campfire Memorial Site," I said. She was digging. Wouldn't stop. Sarah shook her head and muttered, "Poor baby." They cleaned her paw, stitched the torn skin, gave her fluids, some meds. I waited in the hallway, pacing like it mattered, like she was mine. When they brought her out, bandaged and half asleep, she still looked at me. Not around the room, not at the door, just me. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't looking for a dog. But when Sarah asked if I could foster for a few days while they checked for a chip, the answer came out before I could think. Yeah, I've got space. She didn't have a name, no ID, no collar that meant anything, but the ash-colored fur and the fire in her wouldn't let me call her anything else. I named her Ember, and deep down I knew she wasn't done digging. The first night Ember spent at my place, she didn't sleep, at least not like most puppies do. No curling up in a ball, no twitchy dreams or soft little whines. She laid by the sliding glass door, staring out into the dark like she was waiting for someone to come back. I left a blanket for her, a bowl of food, even a toy from my old Canine Partners box in the garage, a stuffed duck with one eye missing. She sniffed it, nudged it once, then turned her head back toward the trees. It was quiet, too quiet. I lived just outside the new rebuild zone where most folks hadn't come back yet. The fire wiped out everything but a few twisted metal fences and a hollow silence that hung in the trees. I knew silence like that. It's the kind that seeps into your ribs when the sirens stop. I sat on the couch halfway watching the flicker of some documentary I wasn't paying attention to. My eyes kept drifting to the shape by the glass. This little German Shepherd puppy, half-bandaged, coated in ash, her breath fogging the door in soft, steady bursts. Around midnight, she stood. I saw her shadow move before I heard her pause on the tile. She walked to the hallway, past the kitchen, past the stairs, straight toward the guest room. That room hadn't been opened in months. I followed quietly, unsure why I even cared. It wasn't like she could know what was in there, but when I turned the corner, I froze. She was sitting in front of the bookshelf, not the bed, not the window, just the old wooden shelf by the wall. And on the second row behind the glass was a framed photo I hadn't looked at in years. Tyler, my old partner. He was smiling, holding his daughter Ellie. She had a head full of curls and a grin that could make a grown man melt. That picture had been taken 2 weeks before the campfire, before everything changed. Ember didn't bark or whine. She just looked at the photo, ears low, tail flat. Then she let out a single breath and laid down, her head resting on her paws. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but my throat locked up. I hadn't let myself go there in so long. That room had become a tomb of unopened memories, and this puppy, she'd walked right in like she belonged there. I don't believe in signs, not anymore, but I believe in instinct, and whatever Ember was following, it wasn't chance. The next morning, before the sun even rose, she was pawing at the front door, limping still but urgent, like something was calling her. "You want to go back?" I asked, still groggy. She let out a sharp whimper, then scratched the door again. I didn't argue. By 7:00 a.m., we were back at the memorial site. Same spot, same cross. She jumped from the truck without hesitation, ran, stumbled, really back to the hole. The bandage on her paw was already dirtied within seconds. But she didn't care. She was back to digging, flinging ash behind her like it was air she couldn't breathe without. I stood there watching her, heart pounding. What was she trying to find? And why did I feel like whatever it was, it mattered more to me than I was ready to admit? She hit something solid. I heard it before I saw it, a dull clink like her claws had struck metal buried beneath the ash. Ember froze, her ears perked, tail stiff. For a moment, she didn't move, just stared into the shallow crater she'd carved out over days. I stepped closer, brushing past the wooden cross that had long since lost its nameplate. The sun was higher now, casting light through the dead trees like spears. The wind shifted, carrying with it that old smell, burnt wood, melted plastic, memories. "What is it, girl?" Ember looked up at me, then back down. She nudged the dirt with her snout. Careful this time. No more frantic digging, just gentle, deliberate motion, like whatever she'd found was fragile. I crouched beside her and saw it. Something metal, rectangular, about the size of a jewelry box. The lid was rusted, the edges scorched, and when I touched it, the heat of the ground had already warmed it through. I hesitated. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something older. Grief has a way of hiding in your bones until something wakes it. This felt like that. Ember sat back, panting softly, watching. I wiped away more dirt with my sleeve until the full box was visible. There was no lock, just a bent clasp and a dented corner. I didn't know what and in that moment, what she needed was not to be alone. That evening, Ember wouldn't come inside. I'd opened the door twice, calling her in with a soft whistle and the promise of food. She just stood in the middle of the yard, staring out toward the treeing behind the house, her silhouette framed by the last stretch of sunlight, crawling over the hills. The wind tugged gently at her ears. Her bandage was dirty again, her fur matted with dust and burrs. But her eyes, they weren't lost. They were remembering. I stepped outside, letting the screen door click shut behind me. The air had cooled, the kind of stillness that only comes after long heat, like the earth was holding its breath. She didn't move as I approached, just shifted her weight slightly to keep pressure off her injured paw. "You going to sleep out here?" I asked. No response, just that silent focus. I eased down onto the grass beside her, knees cracking as they always did these days. She didn't flinch. She let me sit shoulder to shoulder with her like I was just another part of the space she'd claimed. I looked out into the trees with her. There was nothing there. No danger, no sound. But maybe that's not what she was waiting for. Maybe it was the opposite. Maybe she was waiting for peace. I thought about Tyler then, about all the times we sat in silence after calls. Nights where the sirens faded, but the screams stayed, lodged somewhere behind the ribs. He'd never said much, didn't have to. We both knew quiet was sometimes the only way to breathe. And now this little German Shepherd puppy, scarred, half-healed, persistent as hell, was teaching me that same thing all over again. She finally lay down, curling slowly onto the grass, nose tucked between her paws. I stayed beside her until the stars came out. That night, she didn't sleep by the door. She didn't sit at the glass or hover by the hallway. She came into the guest room on her own and curled up beneath the window right below the shelf where Tyler's photo still stood. In the stillness, I heard her breathing. Slow, steady, not broken, not anxious, just present. And for the first time in years, so was I. I woke up to the sound of scratching. It wasn't loud, just soft, steady, like something repeating itself with quiet urgency. For a moment, I lay still, thinking maybe it was the wind or a branch tapping the side of the house. But then I heard it again, closer, familiar. Ember. I got up and found her by the front door, standing on 3 legs, tapping gently at the wood with her bandaged paw. She didn't look frantic. She looked focused, awake, waiting. "You want to go back?" She turned her head at the sound of my voice, then looked right back at the door. We left within 10 minutes. By the time we reached the outskirts of paradise, the sun had just crested over the treeing. The sky was clear, sharp, the kind that makes everything look too bright to touch. Ember leaned her nose against the truck's window the whole ride, her breath fogging the glass. I didn't stop at the main memorial this time. I let her lead. She hopped down from the truck slower than before, but with the same quiet determination. We crossed the open field where the last house had once stood, then into the scattered bones of the neighborhood, burnt porch columns, broken fences, mailboxes with no names. And then she paused. Beside what looked like the corner of an old yard, half a stone walkway, twisted bits of fencing, and the sunken frame of a storage shed, Ember sniffed the dirt, took 2 steps, and sat. Not digging, not pacing, just sitting. I walked over to her and followed her gaze. At first, I saw nothing, just debris and a few pieces of blackened wood. Then something caught the light, a shimmer in the dust. I bent down and cleared the ash with my fingers. A dog tag medal scorched around the edges, pitted with rust. I turned it over slowly. The engraving was faded but still legible. Sable on the back. If found, please return to Ellie. My breath caught. Ellie, Tyler's daughter. I hadn't heard that name spoken out loud in years. Not since the funeral. And now here it was, etched in steel, resting in my hand like some long-forgotten truth, clawing its way back to the surface. I sat down hard on the concrete ember, pressing close beside me. I ran my thumb over the edge of the tag, feeling the grime, the heat of the sun warming the metal. Sable, I remembered now. Tyler got her for Ellie's 3rd birthday. Big sable-coated shepherd, full of attitude, always under Ellie's feet. That dog would bark at butterflies and sleep with her nose under Ellie's pillow every night. I hadn't thought of her in so long it felt like a dream. The tag was blackened and bent, the letters nearly erased. It must have been buried all these years, shielded beneath the rubble, waiting like everything else we try to forget. Ember didn't move, just leaned into my side, warm and quiet, as if she understood this was something sacred. Not because she knew, but because she was present. I looked down at her and whispered, "That was Ellie's dog." She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She'd already found what mattered. Ember collapsed on the way back to the truck. One moment, she was limping at my side, stubborn as ever, pushing forward across the broken lot like the burn in her legs didn't matter. The next, her knees buckled and she crumpled into the dirt thud that snapped something inside me. "Ember!" I was at her in seconds. Her breathing was shallow, chest rising too fast. She tried to lift her head, but it dropped again. Her paw twitched once, then went still. I scooped her up, barely feeling the weight. She was lighter than she should have been, bones pressed against my arms like twigs wrapped in ash. "Stay with me," I muttered, stumbling to the truck. "You hear me? You don't quit on me now." I laid her on the passenger seat, pulled the door shut, and floored it. We hit the road in silence. Her body shivered beneath my flannel, eyes closed, ears barely flicking at the engine's roar. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other gripping her paw. "You did too much, girl," I whispered. "Too fast. You gave everything you had." The wind outside howled. I drove like the past was chasing me. Like maybe it was. Maybe it always had been. My mind raced. Ellie's dog. The tag. The photo. The box. This German shepherd puppy had dragged all of it into the light. Memories I buried in ash, thinking if I never touched them again, they'd stay quiet. But Ember wouldn't let me forget. And now she lay beside me, barely conscious, ribs rising like waves on a dying tide. I looked at her and felt the crack split open in full. "You found her?" I said aloud, voice shaking. "You found what I couldn't face, and now you're breaking because of it." I swiped at my eyes, cursed under my breath. I hadn't cried in years. Not for Tyler, not even at his funeral. But the tears came now, hot and silent, slipping down my face as the road stretched on. "You brought me back to them," I whispered. "And I swear, Ember, I'll bring you back too." When we reached the clinic, I didn't wait for help. I carried her through the door, shouting for Sarah before my boots even hit the tile. She collapsed. I told her, "She's burning up, her breathing's off." Sarah didn't ask questions. She just took one look and called the vet in from the back. They moved fast. IV, oxygen, checking vitals. I stood against the wall, fists clenched, heart hammering like I was back in a burning building. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I didn't know. Eventually, Sarah came out, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "She's stable," she said. "Severely dehydrated. Infected paw. Probably pushed too hard. Too soon. But she's fighting." Fighting? Of course she was. I stepped into the recovery room. Ember lay on a warm pad, bandaged, eyes still closed, but her chest rose steadier now. Her ears twitched when I spoke her name. I pulled a chair close and sat beside her. "You don't owe me anything," I murmured. "But I owe you. I owe you more than I can explain." I pulled the metal tag from my pocket, the one with Sable's name, set it gently on the counter next to her. "Rest now," I said. "You did enough." And I stayed there until nightfall, my hand resting gently over hers as the little girl who carried the weight of fire breathed her way back to life. I stayed by Ember's side through the night, listening to the soft hum of machines and her steady, fragile breaths. The clinic lights dimmed after hours, and silence settled in like a blanket, broken only by the occasional creak of the walls, or Sarah checking in quietly with a nod. She didn't wake, not fully, but once around 3:00 a.m., Her paw flexed in mine just enough to let me know she was still there, still fighting. By morning, she stirred. Her eyes opened barely groggily, but they found mine. Those stormy, ashko-colored eyes rimmed in exhaustion, still burned with something fierce. I leaned in close. "You came back," I said softly. Her tail moved, barely a twitch. But it was enough. The next days blurred into a rhythm. Short walks down the corridor, slow meals, hours sitting together in quiet. I brought her a stuffed fireman dog from the thrift store across the street. Cheesy. A little charred looking, but she kept it near. Never chewed it, just rested her chin on it when she slept. We didn't talk much. How could we? But I told her things. Things I hadn't said out loud since the campfire took Tyler and left me in the ruins. I was supposed to drive that day. I told her once. Tyler had pulled extra shifts all week. I offered. He said no. Said he needed the distraction. And then the call came in. She watched me the way only a dog can. Not judging, just seeing, just being there. I never went to see Ellie after. I whispered another night. I couldn't look her in the eye and say, "I'm still here and your dad isn't." My voice cracked. I left them both in the fire. Ember pressed her nose to my wrist.